Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher. Welcome back to Studio G. Now this is really the fourth in a series of drill press videos, drilling videos on drill presses that we call sensitive drills, small drill presses. So this is what I got here. I recently bought this at an auction. You may have watched that video. It's the one up on the hill, not the one with all the rusty stuff. So hopefully you watched that, and I got a bargain on this. I didn't need it. I really buy some of these things strictly to make a video on. So I want to talk about the design of it and the use of this little thing. And you know, it's a pretty old drill press. In fact, it was built in the era of BO. Yeah, that's before OSHA. And that era was called something else back then. It was called the era of PR. Yeah, personal responsibility. So if you weren't responsible, you didn't have all your fingers and your thumbs and your eyes. So people, I think, were a lot more alert back then because you watched out for yourself and hopefully the guy right next to you. Well, let's dig into this right now and take a look at some of the design features that are kind of desirable and neat, and what is wrong with this thing. Although it does work. I can drill a hole right now. So let's begin. Looking at the belt guard here on the front, and yes, there is a belt guard, at least in the front, but it is badged as the driver line, and I thought that was the manufacturer, but I just think it is the line that Walker Turner made for their cheaper tools that might have been affordable but in the home shop. But back in the 20s and 30s, people just did not own any kind of power tools. They were lucky to have the very basic hand tools, I would think. Well, this machine was pretty dirty when I first got it, and it's still pretty dirty, but I blew off the sawdust and some of the debris and then realized that there's a marking here right in the headstock casting that says Walker Turner Company, Jersey City. I think from the 30s. Interesting, beautiful cast iron casting, isn't it? Lots of places to get your finger caught with this serpentine belt, which very much reminds me of the belts that came on the Corvair engine. And it was so unreliable with Chevrolet that you might remember that they packed an extra belt in the trunk, well, it wasn't the trunk, the engine compartment of every Corvair, right next to where the jack and the spare tire was. But this does run. But to me, this is very dangerous. You could get caught there or down there. So use caution if you got an older drill press. Again, personal responsibility is the key. The motor is only 1/4 horsepower, and it's a Delco motor, 1750, but we do have two speeds. You can see that it's a two-step pulley right here. It would be rather inconvenient to change those speeds. So I'm going to leave it just the way it is. However, a fella, if he was in the mood, could also change the pulley size down on the motor itself. You know, this machine's a death trap. There's no cover on the switch box here, and both ends are open, so it needs caps. And I do have one of these in stock, and I will install that later on. And even that isn't very tight. So this might have belonged to the Three Stooges, or at the very least, Laurel and Hardy. This drill press is a little bit front heavy, so it wouldn't be too hard to knock that thing over. So it does need to be bolted down, and there are 4 holes there to bolt it to the bench. Otherwise, it could really get away on you. Over the years, there's been a few modifications here. So the handle here, I don't know why, but it's made of brass. So if somebody replaced that, it would bend very easily. But then again, we're going to be drilling very small holes with it. And what's nice is it came with a chuck key. But then I realized it's a keyless chuck. The work table can be raised or lowered and locked in place. And in fact, The table will also tilt. There's a bolt under here, but there is no protractor or any marks here, so you would have to square it up. But you can tilt the table if you need to. That's kind of nice. And the headstock here can be raised and lowered as well on the column. This is the clamping nut or bolt. Over on this side there is a clamp here, and when we loosen that we can move the pulleys here in and out, and that would be necessary, I believe, and I haven't done it yet, if we change the position of the belt on the pulley. That would essentially change the length of the belt. And the belt is very old and hard, and that's why it doesn't self-start very well. I had a heck of a time getting it started the first time because it's a 1/4 horse motor, and boy is there ever a frictional loss here between these two pulleys here that and we're changing direction. So you run this about 5 minutes and the belt is pretty darn warm. What does that tell you? A lot of friction, a lot of heat, and lost horsepower. The spindle arrangement is kind of unusual here because this is the actual quill, I guess you would call it, or the shaft that the chuck is fastened to, and that is separate from this shaft here, which is the rack for raising it and lowering it. So the diameter here is quite small compared to what we usually see in drill presses that we have in our shop. And there is a stop right here that can be adjusted for the depth. So it has quite a long stroke. I'm only using a small portion of it at the moment. This little machine has no ball bearings. It's all sleeve bearings, and there would be a lot of friction. So we've got a sleeve bearing right here, and that's the greaser. So you fill the greaser, and every time you want to add a little more grease, you turn this. You probably are familiar with these old greasers. And same thing back here on this dual set of pulleys here. This is the greaser here, which you would turn in, and it would grease both pulleys on the shaft. So there'd be a lot of friction here, here, and in here, and even down here. Perhaps at this angle you can now see that there is the rack, and of course the pinion is in here. And you can see the rack up here on the shaft as well. So this thing really has a long stroke. I haven't measured it, but I'm estimating it at about 6 inches. All right, let's drill a few holes. That's about a 3/16 drill bit, maybe 5/32. And remember, this is a sensitive drill press, so I have a feeling, a tactile feeling of what is being drilled. And of course, you got to reach around all these belts in order to either turn it on or turn it off. That's crazy. You can see where this thing needs to be bolted down or clamped. But it drills quite nicely, doesn't it? Well, that's it for this short video on the Walker Turner sensitive drill press. Hope you enjoyed it and noticed some of the features on an older machine that you will not see on one from Grizzly or Harbor Freight or something like that. Quite a difference over the years. Thanks for watching. Be sure and give me a thumbs up and subscribe and ring the bell and all of that stuff, and I'll see you in my next video.